How you doing?
Good. It's just crazy. Somehow, like, I plan to do things and then it always ends up being like the craziest day of like the week, the month, But having fun. It's our last week of our first rotation. So I have like presentation coming up on Friday and everything, but we got some data back today. It's really cool. So
Okay, good. You're excited about your data. That's how you know you made the right choice, because
yeah,
getting data back
exactly.
really excites you.
Yeah, so yeah, shockingly enough. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Well, Kayla, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
We keep in pretty good touch, which is nice. But I think you have an especially interesting story to share, especially for pre-med folks or those who are doubting pre-med, things like that. Students who like science and kind of tend to only think about medicine as a path forward. I think you'll have a lot to offer those students in terms of your story and how they might think about their own. So anyway, thanks for hopping on here. Appreciate it.
Yep.
How are you doing?
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I'm good. I like really, I didn't think I would, but I really enjoy being at UNC and I really enjoy this graduate program. It's been a lot of fun so far. So, and
Do,
you know
do,
me, I'm not always super optimistic, positive.
that's what I was there
There's a
for.
lot coming from me. So,
Kayla, looks like you. I don't know if your connection is patchy or if maybe on my end it is, but you might pop in and
I got
out here
three
or there.
bars. I don't know why. I could move. Let me see. I'm
I mean,
like
look,
in a,
it looks okay. It looks okay right now, so maybe we just keep
okay.
going.
Okay. If
Yeah.
it messes up again, I'll move around.
Do I need to send my condolences for the national championship game, or are you not
Oh,
that invested in UNC yet?
so it's kind of funny during football season. I tried to get invested, and then we played Miami, and I went to the game dressed in UNC stuff, and I was like, I don't even care about UNC. It was so bad. But the basketball stuff is fun because I mean Miami this year was good, but usually it's not too great. But I mean we beat Duke, so that was insane. But Kansas game, it was a Monday night. I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of glad that I got to go home and go to bed. I must be getting old now, but it wasn't. At least it was the last minute. It was a good game, but
Yeah, yeah, it's exciting. Whenever your teams make it that far, it's exciting, and campus always comes alive.
oh yeah, yeah, it was crazy last week.
So listen, let's jump into this. I see we have a few folks watching, and of course, they'll be able to find this in our feed later on. But let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us kind of the short story of where you grew up and how you ended up at the University of Miami.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Philly, but I moved like all the time. So we lived in Florida, we lived in New Jersey, I lived in Virginia from like I think it was like fourth to 10th grade. And then my junior year of high school, I moved back down to Florida, like on the West Coast near Sarasota and stuff. And I was in school. I didn't really have any clue about like schools in Florida. So I had like a close relationship with one of my guidance counselors, and she kind of was like, "Well, you're smart. You're either going to go to the University of Miami or the University of Florida." And I was like, "I don't want to go to UF," but uh, so I started looking up UM, and one of the first things I found my junior year was a Jenkins scholarship, and I was like, "Okay, that's something I'm applying for." So she kind of helped me with that. But yeah, and then I toured Miami and everything too my junior year, and I really like I don't know, I just loved campus, so it's kind of how I found it and ended up applying and coming here and everything. So
Okay, and then I guess getting the Jenkins Scholarship kind of sealed the deal for you, I'm sure.
yes, definitely. Yeah. So I had one other school that I was between. Um, and for me, like the financial stability of like guaranteed 4 years of scholarships really was just I didn't want the instability of wondering if like, oh, this financial aid is going to come through because the other school I was at, it was all need based grants and they were like year to year. Um, so I don't know. It was just this stability and like the fact that I was like, okay, I have this place for 4 years. I'm not leaving. Like after moving around so much and everything was very enticing, and that's what drew me in.
Mhm. So I remember when I first met you, your freshman year, you came into I guess, OAE's office 2 offices ago. And that's
Yeah.
when we started having our meetings. And I want to get into kind of what your interests were at the time academically. But before we do that, just add a little more context to your experience here. What were you involved in at outside the classroom?
So my like main involvement, I would say, was First Star Academy. So that's a program that runs out of the law school for youth and foster care in Miami-Dade County. And I was a mentor with them since the summer of my freshman year, or like after my freshman year. So most of the year I spent either working for them, volunteering with them, that kind of stuff. And then from there, with one of my friends, I started with you also, fostered and adopted canes together. And then I also played club soccer for 2.5 years, I think. And then I was also part of U Catholic with Anil, whose video I also watched. And then I think I was like part of some like random vague other organizations that I'd go to sometimes, but that was mostly what I was doing.
Okay. You'd be happy to know that I just circulated the flyer for this year's First Star.
Okay, cool.
So hopefully someone from our scholarship groups applies for and gets that position. I know last year we had some Hammonds involved.
Yeah,
so
they really like to I know Maria and Keely are the two who run it. Like they're really looking for mentors that the students can kind of see themselves in and stuff, and people who didn't necessarily have the most like straightforward background, potentially too, kind of because they want the students that are in the program to know like you can go to college. This isn't just for like one stereotypical type of person. So I would say anybody who's in OAE has a really good shot of working there, and they pay pretty well, and you get on-campus housing for the summer. So,
and it's a valuable experience, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is something
so
that
rewarding.
really makes an impact on you. I think it gives you something really important to talk about in future interviews and things like that. I think it's an impactful experience.
Yeah, very. Yeah, it was probably like the main like focus. I mean, honestly, once I got to UNC, I spent the first couple of months wondering because I was offered I don't know if I ever told you this.
You did.
I did because we talked about, yeah, you had to listen to me rant every single week for the whole time. My last summer there, she offered me the assistant director position, and I was like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my career? Well, when you know me, I went back and forth all the time. Am I supposed to be a doctor? Am I supposed to be getting a PhD? And then while I was here, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. Just a lot of, when I first got here, like almost institutional barriers and stuff like that. I was like, do I want to do that? Do I want to just go back to what was comfortable and like rewarding? And I mean, it's still obviously a good option, but a good enough option to me that I was considering making it my like full career. So do it. If you see the flyer, apply if you're watching this. So
yeah, nice shout out for First Star.
Yeah.
So back to you and a little bit more in the classroom. Go back to your, when you first entered undergrad, what were you thinking in terms of majors and careers? Where was your head at academically?
Yeah, so if I'm being honest, I just didn't have the exposure. The only kind of jobs that I knew of that were like science, that were upper level, was being a doctor. Like I knew it was involving science. I knew since I was a little kid, my mom had me watching like the doctor shows on like TLC or whatever, being like, this is going to be you. She just sent me a video the other day of me saying I was going to be a doctor. I was like 2. So I came in and I it's kind of funny because I dropped this and then ended up picking it back up, but I was like, I'm going to double major in biology and public health. Because I kind of wanted more of the like translational human side of, I think, what I thought public health was and like infectious disease. But I also liked science, like hardcore science. So, I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing, honestly. Either you just come in and you think you know what you want to do, and then you take 3 classes and you're like, this isn't it. Like, or this is it. And I didn't expect to be taking this class. But yeah, first coming in, that's what I thought I was going to do.
So, but a lot of students come in and, I often say like a lot of people want to be doctors and very few of those doctors actually want to do organic chemistry and take calculus and all these things. So it's sort of like it's a high price to pay in some regards to accomplishing your career goals. you fought through all of that, and I guess you had a real affinity for science. I
Yeah.
saw you enough when I lived on campus around Mahoney Pearson when you were
Oh
taking
yeah.
Orgo to know that that class gave you fits, and it was
Oh
it took
yeah.
up a lot of your time. But
Yeah.
so how did you? I guess a lot of students who aspire to be a doctor will sort of tolerate or push through and fight through those courses in order to make it to where they want to go. If you weren't fully convinced when you got here that that's what you wanted to do, how did you persevere? How did you keep moving forward? And talk a little bit about how you felt about medicine and how that evolved for you from when you were two to when
Yeah.
you were in college and on the cusp.
Yeah. So kind of that first part, I guess I had kind of an not I'm not gonna say unnatural, but uncommon experience, and that I actually liked organic chemistry, which is really weird. But this is something that I was thinking about talking about too while I was here, is that mentally, I don't know if you remember me talking about this all the time, but I didn't feel like I had the best work ethic. Like, I didn't think I studied that much. I thought I kind of got skated by, got lucky, which, like, clearly that's not the truth if you, like, look at what I'm doing, but that's how I felt, how I was performing. And when I got to organic chemistry, that was like one of the first classes I actually was like, I tried and I earned the grade that I got in this class. Um, but some of those other ones, like, you're just like, you have to get it done to like fulfill the pre-med requirements. Some of it was competitive, if I'm being honest, because like there's people around me who I knew who were like friends of mine and stuff like that, and it was kind of competitive to like try and keep going and stay like at the top sort of and keep my grades up. But also, I mean, some of it I actually found interesting, which is probably why I'm getting a PhD. But the I don't know, it's tough. It's so tough to like try and actually be motivated, especially it's like this time of year right now when you're like somewhere between the third exam and final exams and you're like, I'm just burnt out and I don't feel like doing this anymore. I honestly don't know how I stayed motivated. I think it was just a lot of like, this has to get done, which is kind of the same thing that happened in high school, how I ended up getting the scholarship too. But
Yeah, I don't think that was the best question to ask you. I think this might be more the question I should have asked you. And that is, I see a lot of students who I think start to have doubts about whether they actually want to pursue medicine and go all the way through with it. And I think it brings great anxiety to be someone who's always said, I want to be a doctor,
oh yeah,
to suddenly be like, I don't think I do. And then to turn away from medicine and not be sure what to turn towards. You know,
yeah,
high achieving students, you're go getters, you're motivated, you do work hard, you're talented, you have everything it takes. You're just not necessarily sure that that's the path you want to go.
right.
And turning towards that purgatory of like uncertainty is a difficult spot to be in.
Oh yeah, and
So
I think too, I mean, this wasn't necessarily the case for me, but I know there's students whose parents are like, no, you're going to go be a doctor now. Like, I don't care what you feel, think, or what you want to do. Like, well, I mean, to some extent, but like some people's parents are like, no, you're going to be a doctor. And if you don't be a doctor, we're not paying for it. So, which I guess is here or there, depending on what kind of scholarships and stuff like that you have. But yeah, I mean, we talked about that. There was a point where I realized that I couldn't just go to med school because I would have a good application. Like, and because like I was doing well, I shadowed, I had research experience, I have an adverse background. I mean, I could have put a lot of different stuff on a med school application that probably would have looked okay to some schools. So but there was a point where I was like, especially after I had a shadowing experience where I was like, this just doesn't seem like what fits for what I want to do. Um, like it was cool. I really appreciate like that field for what they do, but I don't know if this is what I want to be doing every day. And yeah, that purgatory situation, it's really hard. And I also think it's difficult because nobody really talks about any other options, you know? Like I've tried to start like, and my friends feel the same way about this who are here about outreach. Like I knew what a PhD was kind of, but I didn't know until sophomore year. My roommate explained to me like, oh, if you get a science PhD, you get paid a salary and like you go do research every day. And it can be clinical or it can be with computers or like I didn't know what anything else to do besides go do medicine. So I feel like that purgatory kind of comes from that too, just a lack of exposure. Don't know what else is out there. Um, but yeah, there's all kinds of crazy science jobs you can do. consulting. People talk about all these different things here. Everybody knows more than I do. That's something too, getting a PhD. I feel so dumb all the time, but everybody has all this cool different stuff they're doing and everything. But
So I remember, I mean, I think shadowing is a great sort of litmus test for a student to sort of look at their path and decide, is this the type of thing I want to do? And it's not necessarily that you want to do exactly what that doctor is doing, but is this the kind of world you want to live in? And then even that, practicing medicine, it can be through so many different domains. So you kind of have to really expose yourself to get a sense of the options that exist, because it's such a big investment of time and money and self to get to that point. But you had another transformative experience along the way. And I remember you coming in to my office and telling me you were doing research now, and you were saying you loved it. And you loved seeing how what you were learning in the classroom was manifesting in the lab. And you saw certain dots connecting, and you know, new things were sort of firing off in your brain, and you sort of found a spark. Do you remember that? And can you describe or talk about it?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember being in your office too and talking about this. Was like, I was in the lab and we were talking about like, oh, this thing binds to this thing or whatever. And you hear these terms like in other classes and you kind of just take it and like put the knowledge in a place where you can take it back out on a test. But it was like, oh, the organic chemistry that I learned actually applies in a deeper way to how these two things are like binding to each other in a cell, which is then making this thing happen. I just thought it was cool because I was like, I feel like before I had like a blinder on kind of, where they were like, okay, here's the knowledge and it stops here. And that kind of being in the lab and like doing that work, like I was kind of like, oh, this is where these things connect to actually make something happen in real life with like, I work with developmental biology. So like this type of cell turning into a brain cell or something like that. Like, oh, this thing connects to this part on the outside of the cell. And that sends this whole wave of different things down. And now all of a sudden it's a brain cell. Like, I don't know. I didn't realize how those things actually connected before. I was just like learning information, putting it in my head and spitting it back out for a grade. It was really cool. And I mean, oh my gosh, here that's only gotten so much more true and intense too sometimes. But very like every aspect of science kind of just fits together, and like I did not see that before until I got in the lab.
Okay, so that was the spark that made you kind of start thinking in a different direction. And I remember having that conversation with you too about how PhDs worked and what the possibilities could be. How so here's what I remember. You opened up to that. It started to sound good. It started to sound possible. But then I think you came back from a summer, maybe even entering your senior year, and you were like, I don't know, I can't let go of medicine. I wonder if I should be a doctor. Like, you were still kind of there. Take us back to that moment, and how did that feel? And what sort of, how did you get to the point of like choosing a path and making a firm step in that direction?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was a lot of preconceived notions too about like what it was going to be like getting a PhD or like being in science that have turned out to be completely not true. I think I kind of couldn't let go of sort of like people almost. And I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but well, we did, about how I said like, oh, I have terrible bedside manner. And I was like, I can't go interact with people every day. I need to go to a lab and go lock myself in and not talk to anybody. But that's not true at all. Like, this environment is extremely social, probably more social than I should be. But I had like weird ideas about like what getting a PhD meant for me, like stereotypically as a person too, I think. But then also, I was just like, like I worked with those kids a lot too, and I was like, I have like some kind of knack for interacting with people, in some capacity. I might be blunt, but in some capacity I do. So I was like, I don't know if I want to let go of that. I kind of wanted to do the more translational stuff too, and I wasn't really aware of the fact that there's a place in the middle in science where it's not just I'm looking at plant cells or I'm treating patients at the hospital. So I think that's kind of why I went back, because I was like, I want to do something with people, with humans, and I thought that was kind of also being excluded by doing science.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to circle back to that. I want to hear a little bit more about grad school, and maybe the question to ask you is, I talk a lot in my work here about the transition from high school to college and how it
Yeah.
sort of asks for something different in terms of preparing. What is that transition? How do you compare that transition to the one you've just made to graduate school?
Yeah. So I feel like the one from high school to college was a little bit smoother for me. I feel like there's a lot more. I'm not gonna. UNC is like this program BBSP that I'm in, so supportive and helpful and things like that. But you're definitely like on your own a little bit more to figure out your own stuff. You can find mentors, you can seek things out, but it's not as like there's not as much of that like safety net and like concern as there was in undergrad. But also the transition has been tough. I'm like not tough. It's also been really like formative and good, but it was a wake up call to be honest, just because I think coming straight from undergrad, I just was not used to doing the whole 9 to 5 thing. Like I was doing like 10:30 to 3. And it was like class here, break here, lunch here, class again, maybe go study, like walk around, go sit by the lake, sit in a glider. Like it was now I'm like, okay, I get here at 9, I don't leave until 5:30. And like just kind of like the life like reorientation of that was sort of for me, somebody who's a little bit more like go with the flow than like structured. It was a little that was a giant adjustment for me. But also it's very different too. I'm never asked to memorize anything. Everything that I do is more like problem solving generated. So if you have an exam, here's a no. Design an experiment with 3 different controls to like figure out how you would solve this problem, right? It's like a written exam that I take home and I have a week to finish it. It's very different that way too of like I no longer like study, but like I have to be reading all the time and like I don't like sit and like do math problems for an exam, but like I need to know how to like write and things like that. So those kind of ways it's been, at least for the type of PhD I'm doing, been very different.
Okay. So what man, I had a question and then I just spaced
And
on
then
it.
I keep rambling, so
No. And I was also looking at the folks who are with us. I guess I wanted to throw out there for those of you who are watching live, if you do have any questions for Kayla, go ahead and drop them in the comments there, and we can answer that as well. Oh, I remember. The question I want to ask you, Kayla, is, we talk a lot with our undergrads about the importance of making connections with faculty, and for a lot of reasons. But can you talk a little bit about how faculty may have been helpful for you in a few regards, deciding to pursue a PhD, going through the application process, and then making the decision of where to go?
well, of all like faculty, you were the most helpful. I don't know if you mean like actual like professors, but
Yeah, you leaned into OAE support a lot, and
oh yeah,
fortunately, you and I had a nice rapport over 4 years, and I'm glad I
yeah,
was helpful, and you're a lot of fun to work with. But I mean the faculty,
like the
especially like
actual,
the PIs in the lab that you worked with, or different
yeah,
professors you had in class over the years.
yeah. There's a lot of different people who I connected with while I was there. Um, and a lot of them have different like experiences and different sort of paths they've taken to get where they're at. So I remember kind of I would like outsource to talk to people and just kind of like get different information from different people's ideas about what they thought should happen or what we should do and things like that. Um, my PI definitely was helpful. He encouraged me to apply to schools that I was not going to apply to. And I also think sort of his mentorship was he was one of the first people in science who I think kind of saw me and was like, you're going to be a successful grad student. Kind of even the way he trained me, he could have, he kind of let me just do he left me by myself kind of to like my own devices. And there's people now at grad school who like, I'm used to failing. He let me fail, fail, fail. I think because he kind of knew sort of what my interests were and where I was going and knew how critical that would be to like being a successful grad student. Because if you expect everything to work and you're trying to go through that challenge of like those adjustments and stuff like that when you first get here and you're failing, all of your experiments are failing because you don't know how to do anything right, you're literally going to have a breakdown. Like, I don't know how people, I already had that breakdown in undergrad. My experiments didn't work for forever. But yeah, so he was very helpful with that. And then, yeah, he encouraged me to apply to places I would not have applied to, which I didn't end up going to, but still kind of helped me see my own self in a different light. But then, yeah, even just professors. I also have a friend who, his aunt works at Duke, who took the time to speak with me. She's like some super high up person in infectious disease, and just talk with me about like the differences between getting an MD and a PhD and everything like that. Was like having like random connections and just like talking to people have different perspectives, and like, or like my bosses and stuff like that. One of them is a law school professor and the other one runs a nonprofit, and like their perspectives about my abilities and where I should try to apply to and what I offered in terms of like character and things like that for letters of recommendation and things like that are all like invaluable.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's all good advice, and making connections is key for sure. We do have a question in the chat, which is awesome. Thank you for submitting that question. It is, seeing as you've thoroughly researched the path to achieving a PhD, what would you say is the largest misconception with this path?
I'll say what my largest misconception was, because I think this like was a barrier to who I thought I was and not wanting to be a PhD student. I thought, and I've talked to my friends here too, and they all kind of agree. We thought we were gonna come here and like everybody was gonna be like, didn't talk to people. We literally sit around on our computers and do like pipetting and like computer work all day, and then we go home and we don't speak and like we don't have friends. You know what I mean? Like just like complete like stereotypical like idea of a science nerd. And then I got here and like my friends, we all go to football games, we went to basketball games, we go out all the time. Like this is not like everybody, people in science are like normal people. Like I don't know why I thought that wasn't a thing, but I think a lot of us, a couple of us did too. Some of my friends have confirmed this with me. But yeah, I feel like it's just people who have interest in science. Like I don't know why I didn't think this was true. Who are getting a PhD. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like other misconceptions too. I thought like the hardest part would be the work, but there's a lot of institutional things that I just completely had no idea about. And a lot of those, like learning that and trying to figure that out has been very like, it's been a little bit more of an obstacle than I ever really perceived would be. So I guess that could be a misconception too, that the hardest part is going to be like thesis work. And I feel like that's probably difficult.
Well, I might have misunderstood. What would an example be of like the institutional things that you weren't prepared for?
I guess kind of like I just like had no idea about like funding. I had no idea about like how a paper gets published, like things like that. Like I just didn't know. I didn't know like the structure and organization of a lab. Like, oh, this is the PI. I didn't know that depending on what kind of school you go to, this is how many years of a postdoc you have to do. I thought I was going to be out in 4 years. Apparently that's an arbitrary number. It's not like med school. You like work until you finish your thesis. Like just kind of like the way that like grad school operates, I just wasn't fully aware of.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Last question, Kayla. Now that you're there and you're kind of, you have a sense of what's involved, what do you see for yourself in the future? Do you want to go an academic route? Are you looking at private things? Like how do you see your future shaping up at this point?
So right now, kind of like going forward, I think what I want to do more so is kind of a teaching professor. So yeah, I want to stay in academia, but there's people who are here who like run like big labs and like that's all they do. They don't have teaching obligations and stuff like that. I don't think that's as much what I want to do. I kind of want to still have, like I kind of figured out with First Star, I like teaching. I want that mentorship kind of role still. So right now I think that's where I'm headed. I preferably end up back in Florida at a school somewhere, probably, I don't know, FAU, USF, somewhere smaller where you can kind of, well, USF isn't small, but like sort of like, yeah, be teaching and connect with people and stuff. So, but still
Great.
talk about science.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think you left the U off your list, but that's all right. We'll circle back.
Listen, they're gonna they want too many years of post PhD work to be done. I don't know if at that point I might just be like, no, I'm throwing in the towel. But who knows? Some people here start their PhD when they're like 30 and then they still do it. So I feel like I'm like old and I'm tired, and then I'm like, I'm 23. I'll be fine in like
Yeah.
5 years when I'm done.
Yeah, there's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another question. Let's go ahead and get that one in. What do you think are the most important values you could pass on to potential mentees?
Most important values. I guess kind of I feel like when I stopped trying to like critically analyze my entire existence every moment of every day and just kind of like settled into my workflow, I was much happier. I feel like you were saying, when you get stuck in that purgatory of like, should I do this? Should I do that? And you're like, you kind of stress yourself out. I don't know. It's important to make like well-informed decisions and stuff like that. But I spent a lot of time making myself upset about like small, minute details of things that either I wasn't fully informed about, or like I ended up making the decision I did because I did consider it heavily. But me and you talked how many times for how many years, and I went back and forth about the decisions that I made. I feel like that stress is just unnecessary to do to yourself. Like, I don't know how to say, like, try and cultivate being decisive maybe, but trust yourself and the decisions you want to make, I guess, too, and what you know and everything like that.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think my interpretation of what you're saying is to be reflective, because I think it's important to sort of stop and take inventory and make sure you're heading in the right direction and you're confident, that you feel like you're making the right decisions for the right reasons, you know?
Yeah, it's very easy to just look around and keep getting stressed out about what other people are doing and what other people know, and like where you think you should be, and what you think your parents should tell you to do, and what you've been saying you wanted to do for your entire life. But I feel, being reflective and falling back on what you already know about yourself and being confident in that, I feel like is good value to have.
Awesome. Kayla, always fun catching up with you. I'm very proud of you. It's nice to see you again. And thanks for doing this. And maybe we'll catch up with you when you're in year 3 or 4 or something like that.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Of course. And we'll talk soon.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.